Although there are multiple things that I actually learned over the weekend that we spent, Ariel and I, in Ciudad Valles in San Luis Potosí, I want to share with you two of them. My name is Vidal, and I'm speaking to you from El Paso. And we just got back yesterday, actually, from an amazing trip, amazing weekend. Every time that we get a chance to spend, time with the church, with the local church, is always a blessing. And this weekend was no different. So we were privileged to be a part of the 36th anniversary at Primera Iglesia Bautista in San Luis Potosí, in Ciudad Valles specifically. And there were two things that just called my attention right away. The first one is, which is kind of an unspoken rule over this, because I'm privileged to do it on a weekly basis, but it was just the opportunity to present the scriptures. And this weekend I was reminded once again that as important as it is to speak the Bible, to present the Bible, the exposition of the scriptures, it is equally important who you speak the scriptures with and who you speak the scriptures to. And I'm saying this because this specific church, this particular church, is a very special church for us. It was an emotional weekend for Areli and I because our parents, my in-laws, my parents, they were a part and catalyst of the planting of this church 30 plus years ago. And I'm thinking, just as a child, when I first, my early memories of church planting and discipleship, it happened in these fields, in these areas, in these churches, because we were traveling. This is about an hour and a half from home, and this is where I grew up. This is where we grew up, Ariel and I. And our parents were traveling in the early ages. They were probably younger than where we are today, Ariel and I. And I will say that they were in their prime in a sense of just vitality and energy and their passion for the gospel. And I have those memories very vividly in my mind and in my heart. So when I walk into the sanctuary, when I walk and met some of these people that I never met, when I actually was able to reconnect with some people from back from those days, when I was a little boy, it was just emotional. It was emotional. It was beautiful. It was once again the reminder that since this church has been there for this many decades and seeing generation after generation now, it's because of the centrality of the gospel. I take nothing away from my parents and our parents. I take away nothing again from the founding pastor and those who have served and even those who were brought into the conversation of people who have gone to be with the Lord, and the new leadership, which is pretty amazing. The pastor, the current pastor, and those who are serving. I take nothing away from them. But I'm gonna say it again. If the church is standing there, if the church is here after 2,000 years, it's exactly because of the centrality of the gospel, which obviously, we said it before, the gospel is a person, is the person of Christ, is the work of Christ. And the church has been faithful to do that. And that's exactly why the church is there. But then again, once we embrace, once we introduce the gospel, not as the wind, but as the foundation, not as the ceiling, but the floor, just the beginning of the conversation, then you get the freedom to really package that experience, package that message in multiple ways, accordingly to where you find yourself. And in this case, we were able to see that gospel, obviously, through exposition, which implies that we were able to teach the Bible for about 3 days in multiple occasions. But also, we saw the gospel at work in every home we visited. In Mexican culture, Hispanic culture, I will say more Mexican culture. And I shouldn't say Mexican because we've been privileged to be in so many places now around Latin America. I will just say Latin American culture, inside United States and other countries, is very common that when it comes to meals, it takes place in homes versus restaurants and all of these places. Nothing wrong with restaurants, and we also go to restaurants, but it's homes. So you, by default, you're just brought into the intimacy. You guys know, anytime that you go into a home, the conversation changes, the dynamics change. Well, it was no exception. We went to so many homes and we sat down and we just enjoyed the beauty, food obviously, because it was really good, but also it was just conversations. And I'm saying this because once again, once the gospel is the centrality of what you do, then you pretty much enjoy each other's company. I will even argue this point, and this kind of a side note or parenthesis. Any church, any family that is struggling to connect, to relate to one another, as much as, again, I don't take anything away from either ugliness or divisiveness of prejudice or whatever the case may be that is causing those things. My personal understanding and my bias is that the brokenness of relationships, the struggle of churches and families in today's world is at the core is the absence of the gospel, is the absence of the centrality of the person of Christ and the work of Christ. So whatever we may find ourselves today, the invitation is always to come back to the basics of the gospel. Now, let me come back to this, because this gospel experience in this over the weekend just allows us to enjoy the company, the beauty of relationships, so profound. And again, to go back and relate to some of these brothers and sisters that are still alive, and they're up in, I don't know, 60s and 70s and 80s, and I think there are some people in their 90s. And they go back and again, they share this gospel endeavor with our parents. I can give you so many details and so many emotional conversations. I don't have the time to do right now. I got to finish this. But again, the Lord reminded me of remaining. You got to remain faithful to the gospel. Do not compromise the gospel. You gotta know the gospel. You gotta be articulate. You gotta be able to articulate the gospel. You gotta convey the gospel. You gotta focus on the gospel, and then you get to enjoy relationships. I mean, just the depth and the width of relationships was pretty much amazing. The last thing that I want to say to you, because there were two things. That was the first one. The second thing was it's gonna be a little short, but is the ministry of succession. The ministry of seeing the gospel moving from generation to generation. Again, 36 years of this church in existence. Obviously more than that, because it's 36 years of the formality of being constituted, but which is needed. I mean, I'm not against the constitution of churches and things like that, but all that I'm trying to say to you is that there's been a community for a while, and they have seen multiple generations. We just got a little piece of the taste where we're kind of a middle-aged people now. Arely and I, we got to see again, previous generations, our parents, again, the emotional thing of that, and the faithfulness, and we were able to be reminded of the work and the investment that they did, and how the Lord honored that investment, that clarity of the gospel in the life of our parents, that we get to be the recipients of that. Obviously, as parents, Arely and I, with 3 kids, which now they are young adults, we get to see that domino effect into the next generation. So let's just celebrate. Let's just celebrate the goodness of 36 years of this beautiful community of believers. And let's just dream of what is to come. Let's just dream of our kids. Let's just dream of our grandkids. Let's just dream about those who haven't even been born. They have not been born yet. And how the gospel promises to bring the beauty, the goodness of the presence and the aroma of Jesus in everything we do. I'm excited to be in El Paso. We're going to spend time with pastors in this beautiful city. I have learned to love this city. Pastors in this place are very special. These brothers are on fire. Every encounter, every opportunity we have had in the past to really get involved and serve the local church in El Paso has been life-changing and transforming for me personally, for many of us. And as Texas Baptists, we're always privileged to be a part of these experiences. So we're here to dream together, to plan, to pray, to serve one another, and great things are coming to this city, I know for sure. And anytime that the gospel is presented, that's exactly what we're going to do, what we're going to plan over. The presence of God definitely takes over and does amazing things. Love you guys. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you guys on the next podcast. God bless.